The telegram had been crumpled in Daisy Johnson's trembling hands for 3 days now, the words burned into her memory like a brand on cattle hide. Arrival confirmed. Reverend Miller will perform ceremony upon your reaching Idaho City, Idaho Territory. Payment enclosed. Warren Jenkins. She stood on the dusty platform of the Idaho City Station in late September of 1878, her worn carpetbag clutched in white-knuckled fingers, watching the other passengers disperse into the arms of loved ones while she waited for a stranger who had purchased her like livestock. The mountain air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and the promise of an early winter. Around her, the town bustled with miners, merchants, and cowboys, all too busy with their own lives to notice one more desperate woman arriving on the afternoon train. Daisy was 22 years old, plain-faced by society's standards, with mousy brown hair that refused to hold a curl and gray eyes that had seen too much disappointment. Her father had died when she was 16, leaving debts that swallowed their Boston home. Her mother followed him 2 years later, some said from a broken heart, but Daisy knew it was really the consumption that hollowed her out from the inside. The years since had been a succession of poorly paid positions as a seamstress, living in cramped boarding houses where the landlady watched her like a hawk, and the other girls whispered that no man would ever want someone so ordinary. When Mrs. Henderson at the boarding house had shown her the advertisement in the newspaper, Daisy had felt her last shred of hope flutter weakly in her chest. Rancher seeking respectable woman for marriage, must be of good character and willing to work. Write to Warren Jenkins, Idaho City, Idaho Territory. She had written that very night, her letter brief and honest, listing her skills and asking nothing about affection or love, because she had learned long ago that such things were not meant for women like her. His response had been equally practical. He was 27, owned a cattle ranch outside town, and needed a wife to help manage the household. He would send money for her passage. The ceremony would be brief. He expected honesty and hard work, nothing more, nothing more. Those words had echoed in Daisy's mind during the entire journey west. She expected nothing more either. A roof over her head, food in her belly, and the dignity of being a married woman instead of a spinster slowly aging into irrelevance. That was enough. Love was for pretty girls with dowries and prospects. Love was not for Daisy Johnson. Miss Johnson. The voice was deep and uncertain, and when Daisy turned, she found herself looking up at a man who took her breath away. Warren Jenkins stood well over 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders that stretched the fabric of his work shirt and sun-darkened skin that spoke of long days under the Idaho sky. His hair was dark brown, almost black and slightly too long, curling at his collar. But it was his eyes that caught her, a striking blue-green like the shallow parts of a mountain stream, framed by lines that suggested he smiled often, though he was not smiling now. He looked nervous. That realization startled Daisy almost as much as his appearance. In her imagination, she had conjured a grizzled old widower, or perhaps a cruel-faced man who could not find a wife through normal means. She had not expected someone young and undeniably handsome, someone who looked at her with something close to anxiety in those remarkable eyes. "Yes," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Jenkins, Warren, please." He removed his hat, turning it in his hands in a gesture that seemed almost boyish. "I hope the journey was not too difficult. I know it is a long way from Boston." "It was fine, thank you." Daisy felt acutely aware of her shabby traveling dress, the dust that clung to her hem, the way her hair had escaped its pins during the long train ride. Standing before this man who looked like he had stepped out of some romantic novel, she felt even plainer than usual, even more convinced that he must be disappointed in what he had purchased. "May I take your bag?" Warren reached for her carpetbag, and when his fingers brushed hers, Daisy jerked back as if burned. She saw something flicker across his face, hurt perhaps, but it was gone so quickly she thought she might have imagined it. "I can manage it," she said, though the bag was heavy with everything she owned in the world. "I am sure you can, but there is no need." This time Warren simply took the bag, his manner gentle but firm. "The Reverend is expecting us at the church. I thought, if you are not too tired, we might have the ceremony now. I have taken a room for you at the boarding house for tonight, so you can rest before we travel to the ranch tomorrow." I did not want to presume. The consideration in his words surprised Daisy. She had expected to be married and hauled off to his ranch immediately, with no thought for her comfort or wishes. "That is very kind. Yes, we can go to the church now." They walked through the town in silence, Warren shortening his naturally long stride to match her pace. Idaho City was smaller than Boston, rougher, with wooden sidewalks and buildings that still looked new despite being over a decade old. The gold rush that had built the town had faded, but it remained a hub for ranchers and miners working the remaining claims. Men tipped their hats as they passed, their curious gazes sliding over Daisy and then to Warren with expressions of surprise and what might have been approval. The church was a simple white building with a cross above the door. Inside, it smelled of pine wood and candle wax. Reverend Miller was a kindly-looking man with silver hair and gentle eyes that reminded Daisy painfully of her father. "Ah, Warren, you are here, and this must be Miss Johnson." The Reverend smiled warmly at Daisy. "Welcome to Idaho City, my dear. I hope you will be very happy here." Daisy nodded, not trusting her voice. Happy. She had stopped dreaming of happiness years ago. Survival was enough. The ceremony was brief, as Warren had promised. Daisy repeated the words in a mechanical voice. Slipping the plain gold band, Warren provided onto her finger with hands that shook slightly. When the Reverend pronounced them man and wife, Warren leaned down to press a chaste kiss to her cheek, his lips barely grazing her skin, his touch so light it might have been a breeze. "Thank you," he whispered, and Daisy looked at him in confusion. What was he thanking her for? She was the one who should be grateful, the desperate spinster who had been given a home and a name. They signed the register, and then Warren escorted her to the boarding house, a respectable establishment run by a Mrs. Cooper, a plump woman with rosy cheeks and a welcoming smile. Warren had already paid for the room and for Daisy's dinner. "I will return in the morning with the wagon," Warren said, standing in the hallway outside her room, his hat once again turning in his hands. "Please rest and let Mrs. Cooper know if you need anything. I have an account at the general store if there are any supplies you need. You are not staying." The question escaped before Daisy could stop it, and she felt her face flush with embarrassment. Of course he was not staying. He had paid for her to have her own room. But they were married now, and surely he had expectations. Something in Warren's expression softened. "Daisy, I know this is not a conventional arrangement. I did not bring you all the way out here to force myself on you. I thought you would prefer to have tonight to yourself, to adjust to the idea of being married before we travel to the ranch. Was I wrong? No, I just—" Daisy trailed off, unsure how to express the confusion of emotions swirling through her. Relief, certainly, but also something else, something that felt almost like disappointment. "Thank you. That is very considerate." Warren studied her face for a long moment, and Daisy had the uncomfortable sensation that he could see right through her, past all her carefully constructed walls to the scared, lonely woman beneath. "I will see you in the morning, then. Sleep well, Daisy." After he left, Daisy sat on the edge of the narrow bed in her room and stared at the gold band on her finger. She was married. She was Mrs. Warren Jenkins now, wife to a man she had known for less than an hour. And yet he had treated her with more kindness and consideration than anyone had shown her in years. She did not know what to make of it, so she simply undressed, washed her face in the basin, and lay down in the darkness, trying to imagine what her new life would be like. Morning came too soon. Daisy rose early, put on her best dress, a dove gray cotton that was several years old but clean and neatly mended, and pinned her hair into a simple bun. When she came downstairs, Mrs. Cooper insisted she eat a hearty breakfast of eggs, bacon, and fresh bread. "You will need your strength for the journey," the older woman said, studying Daisy with knowing eyes. "Warren's ranch is about an hour's ride from town. Beautiful country out there, but isolated. It will be a big change from city life." "I am prepared for hard work," Daisy said, and Mrs. Cooper patted her hand. "I am sure you are, dear. Warren is a good man. Lost his parents to fever 5 years back and has been running that ranch all on his own since. He works harder than any 3 men I know. You will see." Before Daisy could ask more questions, Warren arrived with the wagon. It was a sturdy vehicle drawn by 2 strong horses, and the wagon bed was filled with supplies: sacks of flour and sugar, bolts of fabric, tools, and other necessities. Warren helped Daisy onto the seat with a steadying hand on her elbow, then climbed up beside her and took the reins. As they left Idaho City behind, the landscape opened up before them in breathtaking beauty. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks already dusted with early snow. The valley spread out in shades of gold and green, with stands of pine and aspen marking the waterways. The air was so clean and clear it almost hurt to breathe after years in the cramped, dirty streets of Boston. "It is beautiful," Daisy said, and Warren's face lit up with pleasure. "It is. I never get tired of seeing it. My father brought our family out here in 1870 when I was 19. He had a dream of building something lasting, a ranch that could be passed down through generations. He and my mother worked themselves to the bone making that dream real. When they died, I promised myself I would keep it going, make them proud." The love in his voice when he spoke of his parents created an ache in Daisy's chest. "I am sure they would be proud of what you have accomplished." Warren glanced at her, and something in his expression made her heart skip. "I hope so. And I hope you will come to love this place too, Daisy. I know this situation is not what you would have chosen, given other options. I know I am not what you would have chosen, but I promise you, I will do everything in my power to make sure you never regret coming here." The words were so earnest, so unexpected, that Daisy did not know how to respond. "I have no regrets," she said finally, which was true. How could she regret leaving behind a life of loneliness and poverty, even if this marriage was only a practical arrangement? They rode in comfortable silence for a while, and then Warren began to point out landmarks. The creek where he sometimes fished, the meadow where wildflowers bloomed in spring, the stand of trees where deer gathered at dawn. He spoke easily, his voice a pleasant rumble, and Daisy found herself relaxing, listening to the rhythm of his words more than the content. The ranch appeared as they crested a small rise. It was not large by the standards Daisy had imagined, but it was solid and well-maintained. The house was a 2-story structure made of logs, with a wide porch and real glass windows that caught the morning sun. Behind it stood a barn, a stable, and several other outbuildings. Fences marked out corrals and pastures where cattle grazed, their coats gleaming red and brown in the sunlight. "It is not much," Warren said, and Daisy could hear the nervousness back in his voice. "But the house is sound. I built an addition last year, added a proper kitchen and a room upstairs that could be a nursery someday if—" He trailed off, his ears reddening. "It is wonderful," Daisy said honestly. Compared to the cramped boarding house room she had lived in, this looked like a palace. "You built this, most of it. My father did the original cabin, but I have been adding on as I could afford it. The land is good grazing, and I have built up a decent herd. I sell cattle to the miners and the army fort to the south. It is a living. A living." But Daisy could see it was more than that to Warren. This ranch was his pride, his legacy, the physical manifestation of his parents' dreams and his own hard work. And now she was part of it, the wife who would help him build this legacy further. Warren helped her down from the wagon, his hands firm on her waist, and Daisy was intensely aware of his strength, the warmth of his touch even through the layers of her clothing. He released her immediately and went to unlock the front door, pushing it open and then stepping back to let her enter first. The interior of the house was clean and simply furnished. The main room held a stone fireplace, a worn sofa, and 2 chairs. The kitchen was indeed spacious, with a large iron stove, a sturdy table, and shelves lined with dishes and supplies. Everything was neat but obviously lacked a woman's touch. There were no curtains on the windows, no decorations on the walls, nothing soft or personal to make it feel like a home. "I know it is plain," Warren said, watching her face anxiously. "I thought if you wanted you could make changes. I bought fabric in town, thought maybe you could make curtains or whatever women like to have. I want you to feel this is your home, Daisy. I want you to be comfortable here." The lump in Daisy's throat made it difficult to speak. "It is perfect," she managed. "Truly." Warren showed her the rest of the house, a small pantry off the kitchen, a bathing room with an actual tub, a downstairs bedroom that he said was his, and upstairs 2 more rooms. One was clearly meant to be a guest room or the nursery he had mentioned. The other was larger, with a big bed covered in a simple quilt and a wardrobe for clothing. "I thought you would want your own space," Warren said, setting her carpet bag down near the wardrobe. "At least until you are comfortable here. I will not intrude on you, Daisy. I give you my word." There it was again, that consideration, that respect for her comfort and wishes. Daisy had been prepared for a husband who would use her body as he pleased, who would expect her to submit to him without complaint. She had steeled herself for that reality during the long journey west. But Warren was offering her something she had never expected: choice. "Thank you," she said, and then, because the words seemed inadequate, "You are very kind." "I am not kind. I am practical." But Warren's slight smile told her he was pleased by the compliment. "Come, I will show you the rest of the ranch, introduce you to the animals. Then we can have lunch, and I will teach you the routine." The rest of the morning passed in a blur of new information. Warren had 3 horses. Thunder, a massive black gelding he rode when working cattle; Maple, a gentle bay mare he suggested would be good for Daisy to learn on; and Star, an older horse that was mostly retired. There were 2 cows for milk and butter, a flock of chickens scratching in their yard, and a half-grown pup named Scout who attached himself to Daisy immediately, following her with devotion in his brown eyes. Warren showed her where everything was kept, explained the daily chores, and answered her questions with patience. He was a good teacher, demonstrating each task and then watching as she attempted it, offering corrections without criticism. By the time they stopped for lunch, Daisy's head was spinning with information, but she felt more hopeful than she had in years. This was work she could do. This was a life she could build. They ate bread and cheese and apples, sitting at the kitchen table, and Warren asked her about Boston, about her life before. Daisy found herself telling him things she had not spoken of in years. Her father's bookshop, her mother's garden, the way her world had crumbled after their deaths. Warren listened with genuine interest, his eyes never leaving her face, and when she finished, he reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "I am sorry you went through that, but I am glad you are here now. I think we can make a good life together, Daisy. A real partnership." Partnership. Not love, not romance, but partnership. It was more than Daisy had hoped for, and she told herself it was enough. She told herself the warmth of his hand on hers did not matter, that the way her heart jumped when he smiled at her was just nervousness, just the strangeness of this new situation. Over the following days, they fell into a routine. Warren rose before dawn to tend the animals and ride out to check on the cattle. Daisy managed the house, learning to cook on the big iron stove, washing clothes, making butter, and tending the chickens. It was hard work, harder than anything she had done in Boston, but it was satisfying in a way her seamstress work had never been. Here, she could see the results of her labor: the clean house, the fresh bread, the mended clothes. And every evening, Warren would come in from his work, his face lighting up when he saw her. He always asked about her day, always thanked her for the meal she prepared, always seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts and opinions. When he noticed her struggling to reach something on a high shelf, he built her a step stool. When she mentioned missing books, he gave her free access to the small collection his mother had left, and promised to order more from the catalog when he went to town. Small kindnesses, practical gestures, nothing romantic. And yet Daisy found herself watching for his return each evening, found her heart lifting at the sound of his footsteps on the porch. She told herself it was just gratitude, just relief at having found a safe harbor after years of struggle. But late at night, lying alone in the big bed upstairs, she found herself thinking about the way Warren's eyes crinkled when he laughed, the gentleness of his hands when he helped her down from the wagon, the sound of his voice drifting up from the room below. 2 weeks after her arrival, Daisy came downstairs one morning to find Warren in the kitchen, looking uncomfortable and holding a small wrapped package. "I have to go into town today for supplies," he said. "I thought, if you wanted to come along, you could pick out whatever you need. And I got this for you. It is nothing much, but I thought you might like it." Daisy took the package with trembling fingers and unwrapped it to find a book, a volume of poetry by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. The cover was new, the pages crisp and unread. "You said you liked poetry," Warren said, his ears reddening the way they did when he was embarrassed. "The storekeeper said this was popular. If you do not like it, we can exchange it." "It is perfect," Daisy whispered, clutching the book to her chest. No one had given her a gift in years, nothing that was not purely practical. That Warren had remembered her casual mention of loving poetry, had taken the time to select something he thought she would enjoy, made her throat tight with emotion. "Thank you, Warren." His face relaxed into a smile that made him look boyish and impossibly handsome. "I am glad you like it. So, will you come to town with me?" The trip to Idaho City was pleasant, the autumn air crisp and clean. Warren pointed out more landmarks, told her stories about the area, and made her laugh with tales of his early mishaps learning to ranch. In town, he introduced her to the shopkeepers and the other ranchers, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back in a gesture that felt protective and possessive in a way that made Daisy's skin tingle. At the general store, Warren encouraged her to select fabric for curtains, new dishes to replace his chipped ones, and anything else she wanted. When she hesitated, conscious of the cost, he leaned down and said quietly, "This is your home, Daisy. I want you to have what you need to make it comfortable. Please." So Daisy selected fabric in warm colors, new dish towels, and a pretty blue vase for flowers. Warren paid without complaint and carried everything to the wagon. On the way home, he asked her opinion about possibly expanding the herd, treating her like a true partner whose thoughts mattered. And when they arrived back at the ranch, he helped her carry her purchases inside and then, to her surprise, offered to help her hang the curtains. "You do not have to do that," Daisy protested. "I know you have work to do. The work can wait an hour." Warren fetched his tools and a ladder. "Besides, I want to help. I want this place to feel like our home. Our home." The words settled into Daisy's heart like a blessing. Together, they hung curtains in the main room and the kitchen, Warren following her directions about placement and adjusting things until she was satisfied. He was patient and careful, and when they finished and stepped back to admire their work, he looked as pleased as if he had accomplished something truly important. "It looks good," he said. "Homey." "It does," Daisy agreed, and then, acting on impulse, she stood on her toes and pressed a quick kiss to his cheek. "Thank you for your help." Warren went very still, his eyes darkening to the color of a stormy sea. For a moment, Daisy thought she had overstepped, had done something wrong, but then he reached out and gently cupped her face in his rough, work-worn hand. "Daisy," he said, his voice low and rough with emotion, "I want you to know something. I did not bring you here just to have someone to cook and clean. I brought you here because I was lonely, because I wanted a partner, a companion, because I hoped that maybe, someday, we could have something real between us. I know you did not come here expecting love. I know this was just a practical arrangement for you, but I want you to know that I am already half in love with you, and every day I spend with you, I fall a little bit more." The confession stunned Daisy into silence. She stared up at Warren's face, seeing the vulnerability there, the fear that he had revealed too much, risked too much. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. "I am not beautiful," she heard herself say. "I am not special. Why would you love me?" Warren's hand tightened on her face, and his other hand came up to frame it, holding her as if she were something precious. "You are beautiful to me. You are strong and brave and kind. You came all the way across the country to build a new life with a stranger. You work hard without complaining. You laugh at my terrible jokes. You are gentle with the animals, and you look at this land the way I do, like it is something special. How could I not love you?" Tears were streaming down Daisy's face now, hot and unstoppable. "I thought I was unlovable," she whispered. "Everyone I have ever loved has left me. Everyone who should have wanted me did not. I thought there was something wrong with me." "There is nothing wrong with you." Warren's voice was fierce. "Those people were fools who could not see what was right in front of them. But I see you, Daisy. I see you, and I want you, and I will spend every day for the rest of our lives proving to you that you are loved." And then he kissed her, really kissed her, his lips warm and firm on hers. Daisy had been kissed before, quick stolen kisses from boys who wanted nothing more from her. But this was different. Warren kissed her like she was air and he was drowning, like she was water and he was dying of thirst. He kissed her with a desperation that matched the ache in her own heart, and when they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Daisy knew something fundamental had shifted between them. "I think I could love you too," she said, her voice shaking. "I think I already do." The smile that broke across Warren's face was like the sun coming up over the mountains. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close, and Daisy wrapped her arms around his waist and held on tight, feeling for the first time in years like she had found a place where she belonged. That night, Warren asked her if she wanted to move her things to his room, and Daisy said yes. They made love for the first time with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes, Warren treating her like something fragile and precious, taking his time, making sure she found pleasure before he took his own. Afterward, lying in his arms in the darkness, listening to his heartbeat beneath her ear, Daisy felt something hard and frozen inside her begin to thaw. But love, Daisy discovered, was not just a feeling. It was something Warren proved to her every single day through his actions and his words. When she woke in the mornings, he was already up, but there was always a fire burning in the kitchen stove, so she would not wake to a cold house. When she mentioned offhandedly that she missed the roses her mother used to grow, Warren surprised her a week later with rose bushes ordered from a catalog, already planting them near the porch before she even knew they had arrived. When she burned the bread one day, frustrated with herself for ruining precious supplies, Warren just laughed and said it would make excellent croutons, then sat with her while she cried angry tears, and told her about the time he had accidentally let an entire season's worth of preserves spoil because he did not know you had to seal the jars properly. "We all make mistakes," he said, holding her close. "It does not make you a failure, it makes you human." Warren taught her to ride, spending patient hours in the corral with her on Maple's back, walking beside her until she gained confidence. When she finally managed to trot without clutching at the saddle horn in panic, his pride in her accomplishment was so evident it made her heart swell. He took her riding through the valley, showing her the secret places he loved. A hidden waterfall, a meadow where elk grazed at dusk, a spot where you could see 3 mountain peaks lined up perfectly against the sky. He taught her to shoot, standing behind her with his arms around her, guiding her hands on the rifle, his patience never wavering even when she flinched at the noise and missed the target by yards. "You are getting better," he would say. "Try again." And when she finally hit the tin can he had set up, he whooped with joy and swung her around until she was dizzy and laughing. He read to her in the evenings, both of them curled up on the sofa he had pulled closer to the fire, his deep voice bringing the words to life. Sometimes she read to him instead, and he would listen with his eyes closed, one hand absently playing with her hair, and tell her how much he loved the sound of her voice. When winter came, and the snow began to fall, Warren made sure the house was well stocked with supplies. He insulated the walls with extra straw, chopped enough wood to last until spring, and taught Daisy how to preserve meat and vegetables. They were snowed in for days at a time, and rather than feeling trapped, Daisy found she loved these quiet days when it was just the two of them in their warm home, the world outside frozen and still. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Warren told her about his parents, how his mother used to sing while she worked, how his father had taught him that a man was measured not by what he owned, but by how he treated others. Daisy told him about the loneliness of her years alone in Boston, the constant fear of ending up on the streets, the way she had slowly convinced herself that she did not deserve anything better. "Promise me something," Warren said one night, holding her close beneath the quilts. "Promise me you will never think that way about yourself again. You deserve everything good this life has to offer. You deserve to be loved and cherished and happy, and I am going to make sure you are, every single day." Christmas came, and Warren surprised Daisy by producing a small, carefully carved wooden box. Inside was a delicate gold locket on a chain. When she opened it, she found a tiny photograph of the two of them, taken by the traveling photographer who had come through town in November. "So you will always have me close to your heart," Warren said, fastening it around her neck. "Just like you are always in mine." Daisy had made him a new shirt, embroidering his initials on the pocket in careful stitches, and knitted him a warm scarf. But the real gift she gave him was the words she had been too scared to say out loud until now. I love you, Warren, completely and truly. You have healed something in me I thought was broken forever." The look on his face made her understand that words could be gifts too, that sometimes the greatest thing you could give someone was simply the truth of your heart. Spring came eventually, as it always did, melting the snow and turning the valley green. Daisy planted a garden with Warren's help, putting in vegetables and herbs and the rose bushes that had survived their first winter. She learned the rhythms of ranch life, the cycle of birth and growth and harvest, the constant maintenance and repair, the satisfaction of work well done. Warren hired on a couple of hands for the spring roundup, young cowboys who were respectful and hardworking. Daisy cooked for them, and at night Warren would praise her meals and tell the hands they were lucky to eat so well. She could see how much the men respected Warren, how they looked to him for leadership. He was fair and kind but firm when he needed to be, and watching him work, Daisy felt a fierce pride in the man she had married. One evening in late spring, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink, Daisy realized she had news she needed to share. Her monthly courses had not come, and her body felt different in subtle ways. She was almost certain she was carrying Warren's child. "Warren," she said, taking his hand, "I have something to tell you." He turned to her, concern immediate in his eyes. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am more than all right. I think I am with child." For a moment, Warren just stared at her, and then his face transformed with joy so pure it took her breath away. He pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as if she might break. "Truly, a baby, truly. In the autumn, I think." Warren pressed his face into her hair and she felt his shoulders shake. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet. "I did not think I could be happier than I already was. But a baby, Daisy, our baby. Thank you. Thank you for coming here, for giving me a chance, for loving me. Thank you for everything." "I should be thanking you," Daisy said, her own tears flowing freely. "You saved me, Warren. You showed me what love really is." The pregnancy was not easy. Daisy was sick for weeks, barely able to keep anything down, and Warren was beside himself with worry. He brought her water and crackers, held her hair when she was ill, and sat with her for hours even though there was work that needed doing. When she finally felt better, he was overprotective, not wanting her to lift anything heavy or work too hard. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," Daisy would protest, but secretly she loved his concern, the way he treated her like something infinitely precious. As her belly grew round with their child, Warren would talk to the baby, his hands spread across her stomach, telling stories about the ranch and the land, making promises about all the things they would do together. At night, he would kiss her stomach and then her lips, and tell her she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. In September, when the aspen leaves were turning gold and the air held the first bite of autumn chill, Daisy went into labor. Warren sent one of the hands for the midwife in town and stayed with Daisy, holding her hand, supporting her weight when she needed to walk, whispering encouragement and love. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Daisy was certain she could not go on. But Warren never left her side, never stopped telling her she was strong. She could do this. He believed in her. And when their son finally entered the world with a lusty cry just before dawn, when the midwife placed the tiny, perfect baby in Daisy's arms, Warren wept openly. "A boy," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "We have a son, Daisy." They named him William after Warren's father. He had a thatch of dark hair like his father and eyes that were already starting to show hints of blue-green. Warren was besotted, spending every free moment holding his son, rocking him, singing to him in an off-key voice that made Daisy smile. "I never knew I could love something this much," Warren said one night, the baby asleep on his chest. "Except I do, because that is how I love you." Those first months with William were exhausting and wonderful. Daisy was constantly tired, the baby waking every few hours to nurse, but Warren helped as much as he could, changing diapers, walking with William when he fussed, bringing Daisy food and water and whatever else she needed. He rearranged his work schedule so he could be closer to the house, and if he was stressed or overwhelmed, he never showed it. "We are partners," he would say when Daisy apologized for the disruption to his life. "We are in this together." William grew quickly, his personality emerging more every day. He was a happy baby who smiled easily and seemed fascinated by everything around him. Warren made him toys from wood, carved animals, and blocks, and would lie on the floor playing with his son for hours. Watching them together, Daisy would feel a contentment so deep it was almost overwhelming. When William was 6 months old and sitting up on his own, Warren and Daisy finally had a moment alone on the porch while the baby napped. Warren pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "Do you remember when you first arrived, how scared you looked standing on that train platform?" he asked. "I was terrified," Daisy admitted. "I thought I was making a terrible mistake." "I was terrified too. I thought you would take one look at me and want to get back on the train. I thought I would disappoint you, that I would not be enough." Daisy pulled back to look at him in surprise. "How could you think that? Warren, you are everything. You have given me a life I never dreamed I could have." "And you have given me the same," Warren said seriously. "Before you came, I was just existing, working myself to exhaustion so I would not have to think about how lonely I was. But you brought light into my life, Daisy. You made this house a home. You gave me a family. Every single day, I thank God that you answered my advertisement, that you were brave enough to come all this way, that you gave me a chance to love you." "I am the one who is grateful," Daisy said, tears welling up as they always did when Warren said things like this. "You proved to me that I was worthy of love. You never gave up on me, even when I did not believe in myself." Warren kissed her then, deep and sweet, and when they pulled apart, he was smiling that smile that still made her heart flutter. "I will never give up on you. 50 years from now, when we are old and gray, I will still be telling you every day how much I love you." Time passed in the way it does when you are happy, quickly, and yet full of memorable moments. William grew into a sturdy, adventurous toddler who followed his father everywhere, tottering after Warren on unsteady legs, his favorite word a delighted "Papa," that never failed to make Warren's face light up. Daisy discovered she was pregnant again when William was 2, and this time Warren was calmer, more confident, though no less devoted. Their daughter was born on a spring morning, smaller and quieter than her brother had been. They named her Margaret Rose, after Warren's mother Margaret and the roses that now bloomed in profusion around the porch. She had Daisy's gray eyes and Warren's dark hair, and William was instantly protective of his baby sister, wanting to hold her constantly. With 2 children, the house was chaotic and messy and full of noise and laughter. Warren built an addition, adding more bedrooms because, as he said with a grin, they might need them. Daisy's garden flourished, providing vegetables for their table and flowers for the house. The cattle herd grew, the ranch prospered, and neighbors became friends. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Warren took Daisy back to the place where he had proposed to show her the waterfall, arranging for a neighbor to watch the children. They stood in the meadow filled with wildflowers, the water cascading behind them, and Warren took her hands in his. "5 years ago, I placed an advertisement in a newspaper," he said. "I was looking for someone practical, someone who could help me run this ranch. I never expected to find you." I never expected to find someone who would complete me in every way, who would make every day brighter just by being in it, who would give me a family and a home and a love I did not know was possible. Warren, Daisy said, her voice thick with emotion. Let me finish, he said gently. I know you came here thinking you were unloved, thinking you were not good enough. But Daisy, you are everything. You are the strongest, kindest, most amazing woman I have ever known. And I want you to know that I see you. I see how hard you work, how much you give, how much you love our children and this life we have built. I see you and I love you, and I will spend the rest of my life proving that to you. Daisy was crying now, happy tears that ran down her face unchecked. You have already proven it. Every single day, Warren, through every kind word, every gentle touch, every moment of support and encouragement. You taught me what it means to be loved. You taught me what it means to love. I was so lost when I came here, so broken, but you put me back together. You made me whole. They made love there in the meadow, in the warm spring sunshine, with the waterfall singing behind them. And afterward, lying in Warren's arms, Daisy thought about the frightened woman who had stepped off the train 5 years ago, convinced she was unlovable, convinced she was settling for whatever scraps of life she could get. That woman seemed like a stranger now. Years continued to pass. William grew tall and strong like his father, learning to ride and rope and manage cattle. Margaret was gentle and thoughtful, loving books and flowers, spending hours in the garden with her mother. Daisy and Warren added one more child to their family, a boy they named Thomas, who arrived when Margaret was 3 and immediately became the baby everyone doted on. The ranch prospered under Warren's careful management. He added more land, built better outbuildings, and established himself as one of the most successful ranchers in the valley. But he never lost sight of what was most important. No matter how busy he was, he always made time for his family. He taught his children to ride, read to them every night, played with them on the floor, and made sure they knew they were loved. And every single day, without fail, he told Daisy he loved her. Sometimes it was a simple declaration over breakfast. Sometimes it was whispered in the darkness as they lay tangled together in bed. Sometimes it was shown in the way he still opened doors for her, still pulled out her chair, still brought her flowers from the garden she had planted. Sometimes it was in the way he looked at her across a crowded room, his eyes finding hers, his love as obvious as the sun in the sky. Daisy bloomed under that constant reassurance. The insecurity that had plagued her for so long faded away, replaced by a quiet confidence. She became a leader in the small community, organizing social events, helping new families settle in, and using her skills as a seamstress to help those who could not afford new clothes. She was known as a kind and generous woman, a devoted mother, and the perfect partner for Warren Jenkins. But more than that, she knew herself to be loved, completely, unconditionally, eternally loved. And that knowledge changed everything. One evening, when they had been married for nearly 10 years, Daisy and Warren sat on their porch watching the sunset. The children were inside, William helping Thomas build something with blocks while Margaret practiced her letters. The air was warm, carrying the scent of roses and pine, and somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed contentedly. You ever think about how different things could have been? Daisy asked, her head on Warren's shoulder. If I had not answered your advertisement, if you had chosen someone else. I try not to, Warren said. It is too frightening to imagine a life without you in it, but sometimes I do wonder what I did to deserve you, how I got so lucky. You did not get lucky, Daisy said firmly. You saw someone who needed help and you offered it. You saw someone who felt unlovable and you chose to love her anyway. You worked every day to prove that love was real. That was not luck, Warren. That was choice. That was you being the man you are. Warren turned to look at her, his eyes still as blue-green and warm as they had been that first day on the train platform. And you chose to trust me. You chose to give me a chance. You chose to love me back. That took courage, Daisy. After everything you had been through, to risk your heart again took more courage than I think you give yourself credit for. We saved each other, Daisy said softly. That is what I think. You saved me from loneliness and poverty and despair. But I think maybe I saved you too, from a life of isolation and endless work with nothing to show for it but an empty house. You did, Warren agreed. You absolutely did. And our children, this family we have built, this life we are living, it is everything I ever wanted but was afraid to hope for. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sky turn from gold to pink to purple. Inside, they could hear William laughing at something Thomas had done, and Margaret's gentle voice correcting her little brother. The sounds of their family, their home, their life together. I love you, Daisy Jenkins, Warren said, using her married name the way he sometimes did, as if he liked the sound of it, liked the reminder that she was his. I love you more today than I did yesterday, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today. That is my promise to you for as long as we both shall live. And I love you, Daisy replied, turning to kiss him. Thank you for spending every day proving I was wrong. Thank you for showing me what love really is. The children grew older, becoming young adults with their own dreams and personalities. William eventually took over much of the day-to-day running of the ranch, working alongside his father with pride. Margaret married a kind young man from a neighboring ranch, and the wedding was a joyous celebration that brought the entire valley together. Thomas, the baby, surprised everyone by wanting to go to college, and Warren and Daisy supported him fully, proud of his ambition even though it meant he would leave the ranch. Daisy and Warren grew older together, their hair turning silver, their faces gaining lines that mapped out decades of laughter and love. The ranch remained prosperous, the family remained close, and the love between them never dimmed. If anything, it grew deeper and richer with time, seasoned by years of partnership and shared experiences. On their 30th wedding anniversary, Warren took Daisy's hand across the dinner table, in the house they had filled with love and children and memories, and said, I have loved you for 30 years. I will love you for 30 more and 30 more after that. However long we have, it will never be enough. And Daisy, looking at the man who had spent 3 decades proving to her every single day that she was worthy of love, that she was cherished and valued and adored, smiled and said, then we had better make the most of every moment we are given. They did exactly that. They traveled together when they could, taking trips to see the children and grandchildren who eventually arrived. They worked side by side on the ranch, even as they hired more help to take on the heavy labor. They sat together in the evenings, reading or talking or simply being together in comfortable silence. They made love with the practiced ease of long familiarity, still finding joy and pleasure in each other's touch. They held hands when they walked, still kissed each other goodbye each morning, still said, I love you multiple times a day. The valley changed around them as the years passed. The Wild West grew less wild. Towns expanded, railroads brought more people, and the rough edges of frontier life were slowly worn smooth. But through all the changes, the ranch remained, and the love Warren and Daisy shared remained, a constant in an ever-shifting world. When they were both in their 70s, sitting on the same porch where they had spent so many evenings over the decades, surrounded by children and grandchildren and the life they had built together, Daisy looked at Warren and saw the young man who had nervously turned his hat in his hands on a train platform so long ago. And Warren looked at Daisy and saw the frightened woman with the crumpled telegram, the woman who had thought she was unlovable. "We did good, did we not?" Warren said, his voice still strong despite his years. "We did very good," Daisy agreed. "We built something real and lasting. A family. A home. A love story." "The best love story," Warren said, squeezing her hand, "because it is ours." And as the sun set over the valley one more time, painting the sky in the same golds and pinks it had painted for decades, Daisy thought about the journey that had brought her here. From the desperate woman boarding a train to marry a stranger, to the beloved matriarch surrounded by the evidence of a life well lived. It had all been because one man saw her worth when she could not see it herself. One man chose to love her not despite her perceived flaws, but because of all she was. One man spent every single day proving that love was real and constant and transformative. Warren Jenkins had placed an advertisement for a practical arrangement, a mail-order bride to help him run his ranch. But what he had really been seeking, though perhaps he had not known it then, was someone to love, someone to build a life with, someone to grow old beside. And Daisy had been seeking the same thing, though she had been too frightened and beaten down to admit it even to herself. They had found each other across the miles and the years, two lonely people who had somehow become whole together. And for the rest of their days, Warren continued to prove his love through 10,000 small acts of kindness and devotion. And Daisy continued to bloom under that love, becoming more fully herself, more confident and joyful than she had ever imagined possible. Their grandchildren would later tell the story of Warren and Daisy, the mail-order bride and the cowboy who loved her. They would talk about the ranch that had been built with hard work and determination, about the family that had grown from an arranged marriage between strangers. But mostly, they would talk about the love, the deep and abiding love that had sustained Warren and Daisy through decades of life together. It was a love that started with a leap of faith, with a desperate woman answering an advertisement and a lonely man extending an offer. It was a love that grew through choice and effort, through kindness and patience, through showing up every single day ready to prove that love was real. It was a love that lasted until Warren and Daisy were both old and gray, until they had lived full lives and raised a family and built something that would last for generations. And when, many years later, they both passed peacefully, first Warren in his sleep at 82, and then Daisy just months later at 80, their children buried them side by side on a hill overlooking the valley they had loved, under a sky as blue and clear as Warren's eyes had been, surrounded by the roses Daisy had planted so many decades before. The headstone bore both their names and a simple inscription that William had chosen. They proved love was enough, because in the end, that was the truth of Warren and Daisy Jenkins. They had proven that love, real love, was enough to transform lives, enough to heal old wounds, enough to build a legacy that would last long after they were gone. They had proven that everyone deserved love, even frightened mail-order brides who thought they were plain and worthless. They had proven that showing someone they were loved, every single day without fail, could change the world. Their story lived on in their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, in the ranch that still stood strong, in the roses that continued to bloom every spring. It lived on in every couple who worked every day to prove their love, who chose partnership and kindness and devotion over convenience and selfishness. It lived on as a reminder that love was not just a feeling but an action, a choice made fresh each morning, a commitment kept through every challenge and change. Warren and Daisy Jenkins, the cowboy and his mail-order bride, had lived a love story for the ages. And though they were gone, their love remained, woven into the very fabric of the land they had cherished, the family they had raised, and the life they had built together, one day, one choice, one proof of love at a time.